Elden Ring Night Rain has boss fights. Shocking, I know. Who would have thought FromSoft would do something so wild? Some of those bosses might even be pretty great. I made a tier list for all the Souls bosses, and then after that, when Shadow of the Erdtree came out, I also made a separate one for that. So, here I am again, since I like doing these, making one for Night Rain. And for context, I've cleared all the Night Rain bosses plenty of times, in co-op with a full team, with randoms, and also solo for every boss. And yeah, enough wasting more time. Let's get the ball rolling with Gladius, the Beast of Night. Definitely a boss that was clearly designed for 3 people, and as an introduction boss, I think it served its purpose quite well. It's very cinematic, the arena looks really cool, and the music is also really nice, but honestly, those compliments apply to basically all the Nightlords. But still, it's a very fun boss with a satisfying moveset. A doggo with a sword is always a winning combination. He's just a very fun dynamic fight with basically all character types. And the 3-way split it does in phase 2 is a cool gimmick. The downside of that move is solo play, since when it splits to 3 for 3 people, that works just fine. It's meant for that. But when you're playing solo, it can be a bit messy. The dog's moveset has enough mix-ups with the chain attacks, fire attacks, the split up to keep things exciting, even in groups of 3. And a lot of those same tricks are also still really fun in solo, but that same 3-way split up that's exciting in co-op can be a little unfocused in solo. So overall, I'm gonna say that as a co-op fight, this almost makes it to A tier for me, but it's still a bit too easy. So the Everdark fight definitely has a chance of making it up there. As a co-op fight, high B. As a solo fight, like a lower B. So still good overall. Next up, Big Mouth himself, Adele, Baron of Night. And there's technically 2 versions of this boss, but I'm only going to go over the basic one. And he's an interesting fight, because on your first playthrough, he might seem like a complete mess. But his moveset is actually pretty simple and clear to understand when you know what he's doing. Visually, I think this is the most menacing looking boss, and even the way he moves make it seem like more of a wild beast compared to anything else. The camera can sometimes be a bit messy in this fight, since there's a lot going on and he's very big and often goes above you while it's attacking. Like his moveset is mostly big slams, bites, and a lot of grabs, plus him jumping around, and in phase 2 he starts pulling out lightning after effects and a lot of his like ground AoEs. And these, I think, feel really satisfying to dodge. That applies to his grabs as well. He has the one big grab and then the chain grab, and all those are really satisfying to dodge. As a bit of a reverse, though, I actually prefer fighting this guy solo over co-op, since in multiplayer, he spends a lot of time running after other players, and you kind of just have to run after the boss and try to keep up. Meanwhile, in solo, he's obviously rushing you, so the tempo of the fight is way more aggressive and fluid, since he's always on your ass, trying to get a bite. So in many ways, this is the opposite of the dogs, where I'd actually put the solo version a bit higher. I don't think I'd put it to a completely different tier though. So for co-op and solo, I'm giving sort of a shared ranking here, since I'd say it's a B for both, but solo is a really high B, while co-op kind of falls in the middle. Gnuster, or however you're supposed to pronounce that, the Wisdom of Night, also known as Tadu Bugs. I think the main thing that this fight has going on for it is a unique vibe, as the arena gets all beautiful instead of like menacing and evil, and the music is like whimsical and happy. But in terms of the fight itself, this is far from my favorites. The flying bug is mostly just an annoying range spammer who's shooting out like poison clouds and magic spells, while the big scorpion does a bunch of like big slow attacks and have typically a bunch of like ground AoEs. And sometimes the flying one floats down to do like a grab, kind of like the Moonlight Butterfly floats down. The phase 2 opener is actually, I think, one of the hardest moves in the game to avoid. But there's just something about this fight where it just doesn't really feel all that satisfying. Like, even if you're like playing really well, just smacking the big scorpion doesn't really feel all that great. Like, it kind of feels like you're just smacking it around and it's barely reacting, and you can make the other one catch on fire like the flying one, but even that doesn't actually seem to do all that much. So, I don't know, it just doesn't feel all that great. This applies especially to solo, since these guys have no fear ganking you. And while you're focused on the scorpion, you might get blasted by a poison wave, and then if that lands on you, or if you get hit by the poison grab, you're kind of screwed. And you most likely have to waste a revive on that. The key word for the solo experience is just annoying. You can 100% tell they didn't really design this for solo at all. For co-op, I think C is a pretty fitting spot for it. I think as a co-op experience, this boss is just okay. And for solo, honestly, I might even go for D tier with solo. Like, it's not bad, but it's just meh. I think meh is honestly just the best way to describe the solo experience for this boss. Next up, we got the worst boss, Augur, or Mariz, the Wisdom of Night, which is kind of like the weakest part of the Elden Beast fight, making a return just as its own boss fight. Basically, the gist of this boss is that it's just gonna fly away from you and barely even fight you directly. And as a ranged character, this fight is incredibly easy. If you do solo Iron Eye on this fight is completely trivial. And as a melee character, it's annoying and boring, since you're just chasing it around, and it just basically just fucks off across the arena. The one thing that I do have to give credit for, they do have some like teamwork elements where the ranged characters can shoot the like, big nukes it drops, and melee characters can kill, or ranged and melee characters both can kill the adds it summons, and then that does damage to the boss. Like, they clearly had an idea at least. They tried something, but nothing really changes the fact that it's just boring. It's the easiest fight. I've never even had a run where it's being close to being a wipe on this guy. Like, he's way too easy. At least it like looks nice and the music's all atmospheric, but like I said, that applies to everything. I really hope that the Everdark version does something to make this interesting, because right now this is easily my least favorite boss overall. The co-op version is at least a little bit better, since team composition can matter quite a bit here. In solo, it's kinda just picking between having a super easy fight by using a ranged character or a super tedious fight by using a melee character. So a meh for co-op and a pretty bad for solo. D and E respectively. Luckily, when we get to the second half of the Nightlords, we're going straight from the bottom of the barrel to the top. Satan himself, Libra, the creature of night. FromSoft definitely has a theme going on, since in Shadow of the Erdtree, Midra absolutely pops off and is an amazing boss fight. And once again here, it seems like Libra is the fan favorite of this game. Out of all the bosses, I think this is the one where I see it getting the most praise, and for a good reason. It's a fast-paced fight that's very unique, and there's a lot of variation on how it works, since he has a bunch of different modes he can activate. His normal mode is just staff swings and magic, but he's kind of tame. In rage mode, he just starts jumping around, blasting big, like madness, AoEs. The machine gun phase, where he just starts completely unloading the madness magic everywhere, and the fight just goes crazy. One of the best things about this is that you can actually affect which phase you'll get. If you break the sigils when he does the phase transition move, you can affect what form you'll have to face. And you can also ult him out of that as well. Everything about him just works beautifully, both in co-op and solo. He's a very complex and challenging fight, especially when you're fighting him the first time and you don't really know what to expect, since you should be stacking madness resist. You have to know how to maneuver around his machine guns and AoEs and everything he's doing. He's generally just very weird as a boss fight. He's so different compared to anything that From has made before. And even his music is like super unique sounding. I don't think any other boss soundtrack from any of these similar games have something like that. Honestly, an amazing boss fight. I love this one. Easy S tier. Maybe even S plus, honestly, because I'm definitely considering putting this guy in the top 10 of the FromSoft catalog. But the only reason why I'm not gonna say that right now is I want to see what his other version is going to be like. If that one ends up being better, I might bump this guy down, or if it ends up being worse, I might bump this guy up. So it's up in the air. He's a potential S plus all-timer candidate for the future. For a first-time experience, I don't think Fulgar, the champion of Nightglow, was that memorable in my opinion. He was like really solid, but I wouldn't not have ranked him among my favorites on my first playthrough. But every time I've faced him more and gotten more experience with him, especially during the incident, I've steadily started liking him more and more and more. And now, after having him be, I think, my most fought Nightlord, I'd pretty confidently put this guy in my top 3 for the whole game. His moveset is just really satisfying to play around, especially when I get the hang of his timings and you can really just like stick to him and be really aggressive instead of running away. And the fact that jumping is such a key thing here, because you can jump over ground waves on both phases, like that's really fun. I always like when they, even in like base Elden Ring, when they let you just maneuver around bosses using something else than rolling, like jumping, crouching, just positioning, like all that stuff is always fun. And this guy has plenty of that. There's a lot you can do in terms of movement in this fight, which makes it fun. And he honestly feels natural both in co-op and solo, because even when you're far away and you kind of have to like run after him, so to speak, in co-op, you still have to be on your toes because he's throwing around like those wind waves. So it's not boring even when you're far away. You still have to look out for what he's doing and still pay attention. And if he gets off that Faith like spear move that you can stop with lightning, like that also raises the stakes because those just start spawning everywhere. But there's a lot more to actually look out for when you're chasing around the boss in co-op. And in solo, he's obviously rushing you. And honestly, I think his soundtrack reminds me a bit of like God of War music. A few of my friends also said that. Another amazing fight. Really fun. I've liked it more and more. Easy S tier, once again. And that leads us to the mandatory dragon fight. Caliggo, Miasma of Night. If this was the contest for pure cinematic value, absolute cinema and all that, this boss might take the top spot, or it would definitely be near the top, because in terms of like spectacle, music, visuals, this is a 10 out of 10. Straight up one of the coolest looking and sounding bosses FromSoft has ever made. But I think the main issue with this fight is that it's too easy. Caliggo is weirdly enough very simple to play around, because a lot of their moves are like breath attacks, like cool looking tail attacks, flying attacks, but a lot of that gets negated if you just rush them down. Like if you stay at them at all times and just keep rushing, they don't really counter you all that well, since their like get off me move is a very slow missed attack. Like, for such a late game boss, I think this is probably the second easiest Nightlord from the whole game, which is kind of surprising. A lot of this, of course, is something I've noticed on repeat runs, and if I made this list after just one playthrough, this guy would have easily been in S tier. And best music in the game, by the way. The move where Caliggo freezes the sky, and the music fades away into just the piano and everything. The whole ambience and the sound of that move when you hear the sky start cracking down, it's incredible looking. They cooked so hard, like visually, like audio visually on this fight. One downside of Caliggo kind of exploding a little too easily is that sometimes you can skip a lot of the cool moves it does, both in solo and co-op. Probably more easily in solo, but that depends on your team composition as well. But overall, I'd say like the co-op version of this fight is slightly better than the solo, but they're basically the same. But it's very possible to miss out on the cool sky move, the other big AoE attack, or some of the flying things if you just make this boss explode fast enough. But to be fair, that same argument could be made for any boss. It just happens the most easily with this one. This is the one fight where I'm looking forward to the harder version the most, because I'd really like to get a version of this where it still has all the cool cinema moves and it's still like as stylish and atmospheric while also being more difficult. But right now, as things stand, I think it's still great, and I'm easily gonna put it to like the very high A tier. And last but definitely not the least, Hailtor, also known as John Nightlord himself. This one's just badass as hell. And if you played this fight, you know exactly why. I don't even need to like explain it. Like, the Moonlight Greatsword, them splitting the sky apart, like those alone already make this like, one of the coolest. Especially the sky move is probably one of the coolest looking attacks I've seen in recent memory from like video games in general. An insanely cool attack. The fact that you can parry that if you're using the Executor is insane. It's so cool. Holy shit. And it's not even the only like big anime blast. Like he has multiple moves that are almost as cool as that one. So yeah, in terms of visuals, this guy absolutely fucks. Phase 1 is obviously tamed by design, because it's like a, hey, I'm like a weak mummy man, don't attack me. And then he transforms and goes insane. And yeah, you definitely see that this guy is supposed to be the final boss. He's the most traditional feeling one, probably out of everyone, since he's the badass knight character, but that's typically the type of boss where FromSoft shines, and they definitely do so again. His moveset is very complex, he has a lot of different variations for moves. I'd say he ranks among the harder fights. It's hard to say what's the hardest fight in this, because it's so dependent on your team, which character you're using, etc, etc. But just like on average, I think this is one of the hardest bosses. the fact that he can absorb different elements with the nuke blast is such a cool inclusion, but it also adds a dynamic to the fight, since you can't exactly be ready for it, and you might get screwed over by a specific element. And honestly, I haven't even seen him use all the variants of that move yet. And he also adds just cool guy points for the arena, since the arena looks fucking dope with the sky being split apart. John Nightlord definitely ends the game with a bang, and is honestly among the coolest final bosses they've ever done. He doesn't really have that much lore going on, but he more than makes up for it with just spectacle. And it's actually kind of funny that I think this guy is a better final boss than what we got in both Elden Ring and in Shadow of the Erdtree. If he wasn't obvious already, easy S tier. I think this guy takes his number 2 spot confidently. Libra mostly takes the cake for being more unique. But yeah, fantastic. And that's pretty much it for the normal Nightlords. Honestly, the lists are not all that different. Still, even if the difference between the boss quality for solo and co-op versions is not huge, the majority of these fights are definitely better in co-op compared to solo. Now, the Everdark bosses are a bit of a mix-up since all those haven't been released, so I can't really go over all those. But generally speaking, all 3 new variants are harder than the original, so I'm curious to see what they'll cook up with the upcoming ones. But since we don't have the full roster, I'm not going to talk about them yet, so I'll save that for a later date. Maybe I'll return to the topic when all the Everdark fights are out, or when all the DLC bosses are out, assuming that they'll make them. I hope they make them. But right now, I think the boss situation of this game is looking pretty promising. The current roster is good. I'm not going to say amazing, since there are a few duds in my opinion. But overall, I think the Nightlords themselves put on quite a show. And since this is the first time From has been making fights that are designed around co-op, I'm hoping that the further this game goes on, the better those co-op fights will become. Time will tell. This is the end of the video. Go do something else. I'm leaving, and so should you. Goodbye.